I've been meaning to ask.
How are you? What has your year been like? Did you know that I have been thinking of you?
I've been meaning to ask.
Is your mom okay? Did your sister find a job? Did you ever think we'd still be here?
I've been meaning to ask.
Did it get easier? Did the grief subside? Were you ever able to sleep at night?
I've been meaning to ask, but I haven't.
Because it's hard. Because I want to say the right thing. Because I'm not sure what you need.
I've been meaning to ask, so I'm sorry for my silence.
Forgive me. Show me where it hurts.
Let's start again.
Family of faith, we could all use some practice in asking where it hurts. Take a moment of silent prayer to think of the people in your world, in your lives, who may need you to reach out and ask. Give their names to God.
Trusting that God hears all things, we say together, Amen. Trusting that God hears all things, we say together, Amen.
We do want to say the right thing, don't we? I wonder if that's one reason why we are slow to ask one another where it hurts. We don't want to impose. We don't want to say the wrong thing. And also, I think we are slow to inquire of others for other reasons. Sometimes we are leery about getting caught up in a difficult conversation that may take a lot of time. Or we shy away from asking because someone else's pain is too difficult for us to handle, too painful for us to provide a loving, listening presence. And then when we are hurting, we may stay away from people. We may isolate ourselves, afraid others may pry or give unsolicited advice. They may tell us stuff that we don't believe, things we don't believe about God, like it was God's plan, or God has a plan for this. I want to interject here that God knows our troubles, all our troubles. But please know that God does not cause our pain, but will walk with us in our pain. St. Francis of Assisi, the 13th century monk who is known for just loving nature, always close to nature. He befriended animals, and you may often see him pictured or with in a statue with his hand out, and there's a bird feeding from his hand. He once said that God asked me to join him on a walk through the world, and we gazed into every heart on this earth. And I noticed that God lingered a little bit longer before a face that was weeping and before eyes that were laughing. And sometimes when we passed a soul in worship, God would kneel down too. I have come to learn, St. Francis said, that God adores his creation. He said that God walks with us when we hurt, nudging us toward health and healing. We see this in the gospel story of the woman who spent years and much financial resources and emotional energy. She was seeking to be healed of her disease, And in those days, if a woman had a blood disease, she was despised. Anyone who had a disease was seen as being have a spiritual problem, like there was an evil in your life or something. But a blood disease, you were not just isolated, but shunned. You were untouchable. And yet in this story, Jesus asked her, God through Jesus asked her to tell her story. And she does. God heals her, and Jesus also publicly says, daughter, calling her daughter, child of mine. Now, in order for us to notice if others are hurting, we will need to live our lives in the present. How many of you have a hard time not thinking of what you're going to do next, even while you're sitting here? And or what happened last night if you went to the concert last night downtown? And so I'm competing with Garth Brooks. So, there's all kinds of things that are happening. But if we live in the present, as Jesus did, we will notice when someone's gaze is down. We will notice when someone is walking a bit slower or is a bit quieter. We will notice the emotional space between our loved one, our friends, might seem cold. And then we'll be able to stop and say, how can I help you? Tell me where it hurts. Too often we go through our days only knowing someone, even our closest loved ones, on the surface. Too often it doesn't feel safe for us to even share with one another, right? We're afraid to share our pain, or we stay at the surface because we don't want to hear about someone's pain. Either we don't have time or it's difficult to be vulnerable. Too often folks live in isolation, like the woman who decided one morning, I am going to get up and seek out Jesus. She had this faith that was unquestionable, and she reached out and touched Jesus' robe. Or folks live like Hannah in shame. Hannah was desperate for a child, so she went regularly to the temple to God, sobbing, literally crying out to God. And then on the other side, in order for us to truly connect, to be a beloved community of faith, we will need to acknowledge our own pain. We will need to become aware of our own hurts. We will need to ask ourselves, self, where do I hurt today? How am I hurting? I was having trouble this week getting started on this sermon. I started on Monday. It's hard for me to take Monday holidays off. And so my husband and I went to our favorite little coffee shop, and he was writing, and I was working on my sermon. And I just couldn't get past the first page. And then that evening, Monday evening, as I was falling asleep, it came to me, Mary, you need to find out what's hurting you right now. You need to be aware of the present hurt. Not the hurts that are way, 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 way back there, but the present hurts. And so that was my plan on Tuesday, that I was going to write down all the stuff that was hurting me. Because if we don't, we project our hurts onto others. We project our pain onto others, and it becomes either through anger. We maybe lash out in anger. A long time ago, about 30 years ago, I was sharing with my therapist about an angry episode I had with a family member. And Lois, with her calm, unthreatening behavior, her manner, says to me, where are you hurting, Mary? And I was like, probably about red in the face as I was telling her this, and I was angry, like, I want you to see that that person was the problem. And she again said, Mary, where are you hurting? And then Lois explained that anger is a secondary emotion. I had not allowed myself to feel or acknowledge the hurt that I had been experiencing. And so I had projected it out in an angry way to others, blaming someone else. I began then to learn to value my pain. Sometimes we are afraid to share our pain with our family because we are worried that they won't honor it, that it's not valid, or that I would be told that I need to be stronger. I really do not like when I hear someone say after someone has passed, oh, they're doing really well, they're very strong, they're not crying. You don't have to be strong when you are in pain. In some cultures, if you aren't crying during these times, they would see that there's something wrong. Allow yourself to experience the pain and honor your pain so that you can sit with another's pain. Hannah was mocked, shamed, scorned, ignored, and even diminished because she was unable to give birth. But she refused to be silenced. She honored her pain, and in the midst of it, she was able to cry out to God for mercy. She courageously shouts to God, just notice my pain and remember me. She wants to be heard. It's then that the temple priest comes out to check on her, and again, her pain is seen by Eli as a nuisance, and he accuses her of even being drunk. But Hannah stays with her pain, and she shares her hurt once more with him. And then Eli listens, assuring her that he has heard and that God has heard. She says, please think well of me, your servant. And then she goes on her way and eats some food. I like it that that's in there because don't we sometimes stop eating when we're hurting? Or maybe we might eat too much when we're hurting, depends on who we are. And then it says she wasn't sad any longer. There was no fixing in this part of the story. It was being heard that helped Hannah. I want you to know that Hannah was a whole person in God's eyes, just the way she was. But what she needed was to be heard. Even though Eli cannot find an immediate solution for her, he accepts her pain and he prays for her. We don't always need to provide a solution to people who are hurting. What we do need to do is to pause and sit with them in their pain, to be a witness to their pain. So I have some questions for you, and I'll have Ryan put these on Facebook for you to look at a little later today maybe, or maybe during the week you can pull out your journal and process these questions. What makes your heart hurt? What right now is making your heart hurt? In order for us to stand with dignity and express our hurts to God and others, we will need to know our hurts. And where in your life do you feel vulnerable, humbled, or broken open? I would say if you're still sitting here right now after all this kind of talk, I would say you're being vulnerable. If you're staying present, it's hard to hear these difficult stories. And then what is your first memory of grief? Way back, did a goldfish die? Or did you have to move and you had to say goodbye to friends? I shared in the first hour that one of my griefs, and I think it's very easy for us to label grief, like we do with when we're sick, when we're hurting, how high is the pain between 1 and 10? And so sometimes we say griefs have this level. You know what? Grief is grief. Loss is loss. And nobody can tell you that your loss doesn't count, okay? So I want to tell you that one time in my move, and every time in my move I lose something, but one time I lost a huge box full of my favorite books. That's a loss. How did I handle it? And so you need to ask yourself, what did you learn from that first grief? Because how you handle that first grief can stay with you. Are you honoring that pain? And then how do you emotionally process your pain? Do you go, and there's many ways to do this. Are you able to have time alone? Someone told me in the first hour they sit outside in the day and just look at a tree and see all the beautiful animals on it. I think they're probably friends with St. Francis, that gives them joy. Do you go racing through a pool? Do you do laps in a pool? Do you run? How do you process pain? Do you talk with friends? Do you exercise? And how about therapy? Oftentimes we need to go to a friend, a person that's qualified, who you don't know and will never share your story, and you can help process the pain you go through. And then can you recall a time when you felt fully seen, fully known, and accepted for who you are? You shared something with someone, and all of a sudden you could tell, because of that person listening to you and accepting you, you're like, I'm okay. They know me, and yet they still think I'm okay. Recall those times. And then share with somebody a time you witnessed someone else's grief or pain, or put that in a journal. When you saw someone else's grief, how did their grief impact you? As we become more familiar to these answers, how we respond, as we become more conscious of them, it will help us to be better listeners, to be able to sit with somebody. I want you to know that that pain, people experiencing pain or people coming to you with pain, never comes planned. It seems like it's always unexpected, right? People don't have pain every Tuesday at 4:00. You might be often you're in the midst of something and you need to pivot and change and sit with people. This happened to me on Tuesday. My son and daughter's father died after just 3 weeks of knowing that he was terminally ill. And even though Tuesday is a very busy day for me, I left the office and just sat with my kids on the phone, one and then the other, and the nieces and nephews and myself. We were all took that time to listen to stories, not to fix, not to say that he's at a better place, but to just listen. May God help us follow Jesus like Jesus did with the woman who touched his garment. That when these times come, may we stop in the midst of the pressing schedule, the pressing crowd, and take the time to acknowledge their emotional pain. Will you pray these words with me? Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Amen.